The galaxy had been at peace for millennia, thriving under the protection of a fragile but enduring alliance of various species. However, that peace shattered when the Zithra came. The first worlds to fall had no warning. One day, their skies darkened with massive warships, and their communications fell silent. Fear spread faster than the destruction itself. The Zithra didn't just conquer, they terrorized. They thrived on fear, subjugating planets not through simple domination but by instilling pure panic in their inhabitants. Their brutal attacks were both psychological and physical. Worlds were razed, cities flattened, and populations decimated. Survivors, if there were any, spoke of mind games, terrifying psychological tactics, and the sheer horror that the Zithra brought with them. They had no mercy. This was not conquest for resources, it was for control through terror. On the fringes of the galaxy, the Galactic Council convened. Leaders from every major species gathered in secret, debating their options. Desperation hung heavy in the air. A few dozen species had already fallen, and the rest knew they were next. The Zithra didn't negotiate. They didn't seek alliances. They consumed. The council members, usually proud, were reduced to anxious whispers. "We cannot fight them," one council member admitted, his long, slender fingers trembling as he addressed the room. "Their technology is too advanced. Every fleet we send is destroyed before they can even approach a Zithra ship." Others nodded in agreement. There seemed to be no strategy, no weapon that could stand against the Zithra's relentless assault. Yet, in the back of the room, an elder figure spoke up, his voice barely more than a whisper. "There is one species we have not yet called upon." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the elder, their confusion palpable. "Humans," he said. There was a collective murmur of uncertainty. Humans? The species that had only recently joined the galactic stage? They were primitive compared to the other races, barely having ventured beyond their own solar system. Their technology was basic, their fleet small. What could they possibly offer in the face of an enemy like the Zithra? But the elder spoke of stories passed down from the oldest civilizations, stories of a species that had defied all odds throughout their short history. A species that had fought wars with ingenuity and perseverance. A species that refused to surrender, no matter the odds. The council debated. Some argued that it was pointless to reach out to a species so technologically behind. Others feared that humanity's involvement might draw the Zithra's attention to Earth, dooming another world. But as more worlds fell, their desperation grew. And so, they sent the message. Humanity received the transmission from the Galactic Council with equal parts skepticism and intrigue. Earth had known about the Zithra's conquests through intercepted communications, but their full scale had never been clear until now. The request for aid wasn't expected. Why would the Council turn to a species still new to space travel, one that didn't even have planetary defense fleets to rival their own? Yet, Earth's leaders gathered. The alien diplomats painted a grim picture, showing images of ravaged worlds, desolate landscapes where life once thrived. The Zithra weren't just a threat to distant planets, they were a looming menace that could eventually reach Earth's doorstep. The room was tense. Some leaders were reluctant, fearing the risk was too great. But others, the ones who understood humanity's history, saw this as an opportunity. Not just for survival, but for humanity to prove itself on a galactic scale. To show what Earth was capable of. After long deliberation, the decision was made. Humanity would fight. But they wouldn't fight like the other species had. Earth's military, though smaller and less advanced, had learned one key lesson from centuries of warfare: technology wasn't everything. Strategy, innovation, and psychology were just as important. If the Zithra thrived on terror, then humanity would deny them that. They would fight smart, using guerrilla tactics and unconventional warfare. And they wouldn't fight alone. Humanity's first step was to establish alliances with other species who had survived the Zithra's assaults, gathering intelligence on the invaders' weaknesses. Human scientists and engineers worked around the clock, developing new technologies to counter the Zithra's overwhelming firepower. But it wasn't just about weapons, it was about understanding the enemy. The Galactic Council, once skeptical of Earth's ability to contribute meaningfully, watched with growing curiosity as humanity prepared for war. Their approach was unlike anything the Council had seen before. Where other species relied on brute force, humanity relied on adaptability. Where others had fought head-on, humanity prepared for subterfuge. As the first human ships left Earth, the galaxy waited, hoping, perhaps even praying, that humanity could succeed where so many had failed. But no one truly knew what the humans were capable of. Not yet. The galactic transmission reached Earth, cutting through layers of bureaucracy and entering the heart of the Global Defense Command. The message was clear: the galaxy was under siege, and humanity had been asked to intervene. It was a plea for help, something humanity hadn't expected to hear from advanced alien civilizations. Earth had barely made its way into the interstellar arena, but now the stakes were astronomical, quite literally. A high-level emergency summit was convened. The world's leaders gathered in a war room beneath the surface, shielded by meters of reinforced steel and earth. The alien diplomats presented the grim reality: the Zithra were beyond anything Earth had ever encountered, both technologically and tactically. They described a nightmare. Fleets of dark ships, advanced weaponry that could reduce entire planets to ash, and soldiers bred for war, designed to break their enemies' minds as much as their bodies. The alien representatives looked on with anxious eyes, waiting for humanity's response. Humanity's leadership, a blend of military commanders, scientists, and political figures, exchanged glances. There was no denying the danger. The images of the Zithra's destruction were chilling: entire cities wiped out, civilizations brought to their knees. Yet, Earth's representatives remained calm. They had been in desperate situations before, maybe not on this scale, but desperation was nothing new. Earth had been forged in it. Wars, natural disasters, existential threats, all had shaped humanity into a species that didn't give up. And here, in this moment, they were faced with another challenge. The debate began. Some leaders argued against intervention. The risks were too high, they said. Humanity was still rebuilding from its last global conflicts, and its fleets were too small, its weapons too primitive. Why invite destruction to their doorstep? If the Zithra hadn't noticed Earth yet, why not remain in the shadows? But others pushed back. The Zithra wouldn't stop with the outer colonies. Once they were done with the rest of the galaxy, Earth would be next. And even if they weren't, was it in humanity's nature to sit back and let others burn? No. That wasn't who they were. Earth had always stepped in when it mattered. Always fought when there was something worth fighting for. The discussion intensified. Military leaders laid out the risks, but the scientists and strategists saw something else. The Zithra, for all their power, had a flaw. Their strength was rooted in terror. They crushed their enemies by overwhelming them, breaking their spirit before they even had a chance to fight back. But humans? Humans were different. They didn't break that easily. In fact, the more you pushed them, the harder they pushed back. Eventually, the room fell silent as the final decision loomed. The representative leading the summit, a figure known for both wisdom and unshakable resolve, stood and addressed the gathered leaders. The risks were clear. But so was the opportunity. If humanity could stand against the Zithra, they wouldn't just be saving themselves, they would be saving the galaxy. And they would be proving, to themselves and the universe, what humanity was truly capable of. The decision was made: humanity would fight. But it wouldn't be a conventional fight. Earth's forces knew they couldn't match the Zithra in a direct confrontation. Instead, they would play to their strengths: humanity's ingenuity, adaptability, and refusal to quit. Earth's best minds were mobilized immediately. Scientists and engineers worked day and night, developing new technologies, hacking into alien databases, and studying the Zithra's tactics. They dissected every piece of data the alien diplomats had brought with them. What they found was both terrifying and enlightening. The Zithra relied heavily on their advanced AI systems and overwhelming firepower, but they were predictable. Their tactics were built on brute force and fear. This was their weakness. Humanity's forces began preparing to exploit it. They wouldn't fight the Zithra's war. They would fight their own. Tactical teams began developing strategies focused on guerrilla warfare, using the environment and misdirection. Humanity had always been resourceful, turning disadvantages into opportunities. If the Zithra expected a straightforward battle, they were in for a surprise. The human military mobilized its fleets, but alongside the soldiers were engineers, hackers, and strategists. This would be a war fought not just with weapons, but with brains. They would strike where the Zithra least expected it, disrupt their systems, turn their technology against them, and outsmart them at every turn. Back in the Galactic Council, the other species watched with a mix of skepticism and hope. They had underestimated humanity before. Now, they would see if these humans, these strange beings from a small planet on the edge of the galaxy, could truly make a difference. As Earth's forces began their final preparations, there was no fanfare, no grand speeches. Only a quiet determination. Humanity had faced extinction before, and they had survived. They weren't about to stop now. The Zithra, confident after their unbroken string of victories, set their sights on a key galactic outpost near Orion. It was a strategic location, vital to the galactic defense network, and the Zithra expected a swift conquest. Their fleet, a dark wave of warships, descended upon the outpost, prepared to destroy everything in their path. But this time, things were different. Unbeknownst to the Zithra, humanity had anticipated this move. While the rest of the galaxy had failed to match the Zithra's brute strength, humans had focused on learning from the enemy's patterns. They had studied the Zithra's tactics, observed how their fleets moved, how they deployed their forces. Now, Earth's forces were ready, and the first test of their strategy was about to begin. As the Zithra fleet approached, they encountered nothing. No defense systems activated, no ships on their radar. It was as if the outpost had been abandoned. The Zithra, used to crushing resistance early, assumed the outpost had already surrendered to their reputation alone. They moved in, prepared to claim it with minimal effort. Then, suddenly, their systems began to glitch. Displays flickered, sensors malfunctioned, and communications scrambled. At first, they dismissed it as a minor malfunction. But then, without warning, their shields went down. Entire squadrons were left exposed, and before the Zithra could react, a barrage of precisely targeted strikes hit their most vulnerable ships. The Zithra, for all their technological superiority, had never encountered tactics like this. Instead of facing a fleet in direct combat, they were being ambushed from the shadows. Humanity had sent only a handful of ships, but these were no ordinary warships. Equipped with advanced stealth technology and armed with hacking tools, these human vessels had infiltrated the Zithra's systems before they even arrived. By the time the Zithra realized what was happening, it was too late. Their most critical vessels were disabled or destroyed, and their command structure was in disarray. The human ships moved with precision, striking fast and vanishing before the Zithra could retaliate. It was a far cry from the direct confrontations the Zithra had grown accustomed to. They were fighting an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't predict. As the battle unfolded, humanity employed another tactic the Zithra had never faced: psychological warfare. Human forces broadcast strange, unsettling signals across Zithra communications, creating confusion and fear among the enemy ranks. They hacked into the Zithra's internal communications, sending misleading messages, making it impossible for the Zithra commanders to trust their own orders. The Zithra had thrived on fear, but now they were the ones experiencing it. For the first time in their long campaign of terror, they faced an enemy who wasn't afraid of them, an enemy who didn't just fight back, but did so in ways they couldn't understand. As the battle raged on, human commando units deployed on the ground, infiltrating Zithra ships and stations. These small, agile teams were trained in unconventional warfare, skilled in sabotage and close-quarters combat. They didn't engage in prolonged firefights. Instead, they targeted critical systems, disabling engines, weapon arrays, and communications. The Zithra, used to overwhelming force, couldn't adapt quickly enough. What the Zithra didn't know was that humanity wasn't just attacking them physically, they were learning with every encounter. Each skirmish, each hacked system, provided more data for Earth's strategists and engineers. They were mapping the Zithra's weaknesses in real time, using every engagement as an opportunity to refine their tactics. The result was devastating for the Zithra. Their forces, disoriented and unable to regroup, began to retreat. They had never been defeated like this before, not by sheer firepower, but by an enemy who fought in ways they had never even considered. By the time the battle ended, the Zithra fleet was in shambles. Humanity had claimed its first major victory, and the message was clear: the Zithra could be beaten. Back at the Galactic Council, the reaction to humanity's triumph was a mix of shock and disbelief. Many had doubted that Earth could contribute meaningfully to the war. They had assumed humanity's technology was too primitive, their numbers too small. But the reports coming in from the battlefield told a different story. For the first time in the war, the Zithra had been forced to retreat. And it wasn't because of overwhelming firepower or superior technology. It was because humanity had fought smarter, using tactics that the rest of the galaxy hadn't even considered. Guerrilla warfare, psychological manipulation, technological disruption, these were the weapons humanity wielded, and they wielded them to perfection. But humanity knew this was only the beginning. The Zithra had been caught off guard, but they wouldn't stay unprepared for long. They would adapt, as they always did. And when they came back, they would be stronger, more cautious. Earth's forces had won the first round, but they understood that the real challenge was yet to come. In the aftermath of the battle, human leaders convened once again. The victory was a morale boost, no doubt, but there was no time to celebrate. They had to prepare for the Zithra's inevitable counterattack. Every aspect of their strategy was analyzed and refined, every lesson from the battle taken into account. And so, the work continued. Humanity had proven they could stand toe-to-toe with the most feared enemy in the galaxy. But could they win the war? That question still loomed, heavy over every decision, every strategy session. For now, though, the galaxy had hope, a hope it hadn't had since the Zithra first arrived. Humanity had drawn a line in the sand, and the Zithra had stumbled. Whether or not that stumble would lead to their fall remained to be seen. But one thing was clear: the galaxy had underestimated humanity. They wouldn't make that mistake again. Neither would the Zithra. The Zithra, humiliated by their defeat at the Orion outpost, regrouped with a fury unlike anything they had shown before. Their commanders convened in the cold darkness of deep space, analyzing every detail of the battle that had shattered their air of invincibility. They couldn't comprehend how a species as young and technologically inferior as humanity had bested them. The Zithra's response was swift and brutal: they would crush Earth, make an example of humanity, and restore the fear that had once kept the galaxy in submission. Earth's leaders knew the Zithra would come for them. There was no question. The victory at Orion had been a critical blow to the Zithra's pride, but it also marked humanity as a target. The Zithra wouldn't allow humanity to continue undermining their dominance. So, preparations began immediately. Earth's scientists and military strategists worked around the clock, knowing that when the Zithra returned, they wouldn't just send a fleet, they would send everything they had. But Earth wasn't waiting passively. Humanity had learned a crucial lesson: the key to victory wasn't just defending, it was staying one step ahead. While the Zithra licked their wounds, Earth ramped up its own efforts to innovate, expand, and improve. Every scrap of Zithra technology they had captured during the Orion battle was dismantled, analyzed, and re-engineered. Human scientists developed countermeasures for the Zithra's advanced weaponry, while tacticians devised new strategies to further exploit the weaknesses they had uncovered. Diplomatically, humanity made bold moves. They reached out to the other species who had suffered under the Zithra's reign of terror, not with the usual cautious overtures but with a new tone, one of confidence. The message was clear: the galaxy didn't need to live in fear any longer. The Zithra could be defeated, but it would require unity, strategy, and determination. And humanity was ready to lead that charge. Initially, the response from the Galactic Council was mixed. Some species, still paralyzed by fear, doubted that any true victory against the Zithra was possible. They had seen too many worlds fall, too many armies obliterated. But others, inspired by Earth's audacity in their recent success, began to rally. Small alliances formed, and for the first time in generations, the galaxy saw a glimmer of hope. As Earth prepared for the inevitable assault, the Zithra fleet gathered in overwhelming force. This time, they weren't just bringing a portion of their armada, they were bringing the full weight of their military might. Every available ship, every soldier, every resource was funneled into a massive operation designed to wipe humanity from existence. The Zithra commanders, enraged and humiliated, vowed to make Earth an example to the rest of the galaxy, defy the Zithra, and there would be no mercy. The day came sooner than expected. Zithra ships began appearing on the edges of the solar system, vast and menacing. Earth's deep space sensors picked them up immediately, and alarms were sounded across the globe. The invasion had begun. But this time, humanity wasn't caught off guard. Earth's fleets, though smaller, were ready. Ships equipped with cutting-edge technology, reverse-engineered from the Zithra's own designs, stood in formation, waiting for the inevitable clash. On the ground, every city had been fortified, every defense system updated to resist the advanced weaponry the Zithra would deploy. The atmosphere was tense, but there was a quiet determination in every soldier, every citizen. The Zithra arrived in waves, darkening the skies of Earth's outer colonies first. Their ships descended like a black storm, and the initial bombardments were fierce. But as the Zithra unleashed their full force, they quickly realized something was wrong. Earth's defenses weren't crumbling under the pressure. In fact, they were holding, and more than that, they were fighting back with brutal efficiency. Human engineers had devised shield systems that could resist the Zithra's energy weapons. Ground forces used advanced exosuits and drones to counter the Zithra's biologically engineered soldiers. And in space, human pilots executed daring maneuvers that baffled the Zithra's commanders. Humanity wasn't just surviving, they were adapting, evolving in real time, responding to every new Zithra tactic with precision. The Zithra, used to overwhelming victories, began to falter. Their massive fleet, though technologically superior, found itself struggling against an enemy that refused to play by their rules. Earth's forces were using guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run strikes, and misdirection on a massive scale. The Zithra couldn't predict where the next attack would come from, and their commanders grew increasingly frustrated as their meticulously planned invasion began to unravel. Behind the front lines, Earth's command centers were buzzing with coordinated action. Human intelligence teams had infiltrated the Zithra's communications, feeding false data into their networks, causing chaos among their ranks. It wasn't just a physical battle, it was a battle of information, and humanity was winning. But the Zithra wouldn't give up easily. They had invested too much in this invasion to retreat. Their commanders, driven by pride and rage, pushed their forces harder. The battles became fiercer, the casualties on both sides mounting. For a moment, it seemed like the Zithra might still overwhelm Earth by sheer numbers alone. And then, humanity revealed its final card. In the midst of the chaos, a small strike team, led by Earth's finest operatives, infiltrated the Zithra's command vessel. This wasn't a suicide mission, this was the culmination of months of planning, studying, and preparation. The Zithra, for all their power, had one critical vulnerability: they relied too much on centralized command. If that command could be taken out, their forces would be thrown into disarray. The operatives moved with precision, bypassing the Zithra's defenses, disabling critical systems, and reaching the heart of the command structure. In a matter of hours, the Zithra fleet, once a perfectly coordinated machine, descended into chaos. Ships lost communication with each other, command signals went dark, and the once unified invasion force became a scattered mess. The tide of battle shifted. Humanity, seizing the opportunity, launched a full-scale counterattack. Zithra ships, unable to regroup, were picked off one by one. Their ground forces, cut off from reinforcements, were surrounded and neutralized. What had been a near-certain victory for the Zithra turned into a rout. In the end, the Zithra fleet was shattered. The few ships that remained limped away, defeated and broken. Earth had not only survived the assault, it had won decisively. The galaxy watched in disbelief as the unthinkable happened. The Zithra, the terror of the stars, had been bested by humanity. But humanity knew this victory wasn't the end. The Zithra would return, eventually, and the war wasn't over. But now, the galaxy had changed. The Zithra were no longer seen as invincible, and humanity had proven that they were not just survivors, they were a force to be reckoned with. The aftermath of the battle left Earth both triumphant and cautious. The Zithra's crushing defeat had sent ripples through the galaxy, but no one knew how long it would take before the Zithra regrouped and returned. The victory had come at a cost, countless lives lost, cities scarred, and a civilization forced into wartime adaptation. But humanity wasn't broken. If anything, they had become stronger, more unified. For the first time in centuries, the people of Earth had set aside their differences and stood together against a common enemy. In the quiet moments after the final Zithra ships had fled, humanity took stock of its new reality. Earth had not just survived, it had ascended. They were no longer a backwater planet on the fringes of galactic politics. The galaxy now looked to humanity for leadership, guidance, and hope. The once dominant Zithra had been humbled, and the balance of power had shifted. Humanity, for better or worse, now held a central role in the future of the galaxy. Back on Earth, the rebuilding process began. The war had left deep scars, both on the landscape and in the hearts of its people. But the resilience that had carried humanity through its darkest days remained. Engineers and architects worked to restore the cities that had been damaged, building them stronger and more fortified than before. Scientists continued to develop new technologies, not just for war, but for the advancement of humanity as a whole. They had glimpsed the vast potential of the galaxy, and there was no turning back. However, the psychological toll of the war lingered. Humanity had always been a species that thrived in adversity, but the scale of the destruction left many grappling with the existential weight of what they had faced. The Zithra were a reminder that the universe was full of dangers far beyond what humanity had previously imagined. The knowledge that they would have to remain vigilant, always ready for the next threat, cast a shadow over the celebrations of victory. As Earth rebuilt, so did its alliances. The species that had once looked down on humanity now sought them out. Representatives from distant worlds arrived on Earth, their initial arrogance replaced by cautious respect. The Galactic Council, once dismissive of Earth's role in interstellar affairs, now sought human input in shaping the future. Humanity had earned its place at the table, not through diplomacy or technological prowess, but by proving that they could win where others had failed. Earth's leaders faced a new challenge: how to wield this newfound influence. There was a delicate balance to maintain. The galaxy was watching closely, some hoping that humanity would continue to fight against the Zithra, while others feared that Earth might use its growing power for conquest. Earth's diplomats walked a fine line, assuring the galaxy that they sought peace and unity, even as they prepared for the inevitable return of the Zithra. Meanwhile, human strategists and scientists were already at work on the next phase of defense. The Zithra may have been driven back, but they were far from defeated. Humanity couldn't afford to be complacent. The victory had bought them time, but the Zithra were known for their resilience, and Earth had no illusions about their eventual return. The challenge now was to ensure that the next time the Zithra came, humanity would be ready, not just to defend, but to end the threat once and for all. Earth's military forces began to change in the wake of the war. What had started as a patchwork coalition of national armies and space fleets was now evolving into something more. For the first time, Earth's defense forces operated under a unified command, with resources pooled and technology shared across all borders. The war had taught humanity the importance of cooperation, not just among its own people but with the galaxy at large. Earth's military would now be a force designed not only to protect the planet but to act as a guardian for those who couldn't defend themselves. At the same time, humanity understood the need for diplomacy. The galaxy was full of species with their own agendas, and Earth couldn't rely on military might alone to ensure its survival. Diplomatic missions were launched across the stars, reaching out to both old allies and former enemies. Humanity's message was simple: unity was the key to survival. The Zithra had thrived on division and fear, but together, the galaxy could stand against them. And so, the galaxy began to change. Inspired by humanity's example, more species began to put aside their differences. Old rivalries were set aside in favor of cooperation. The seeds of a new galactic order were being sown, one that could potentially stand against the Zithra when they inevitably returned. Earth had become a symbol, a beacon of hope that even the mightiest of enemies could be brought down. But not everyone was convinced. In the darker corners of the galaxy, whispers of dissent began to grow. Some species, long accustomed to the Zithra's rule, feared that humanity's rise would only replace one tyrant with another. There were those who resented Earth's sudden influence, viewing humanity as upstarts who had simply gotten lucky in one battle. These factions quietly prepared for the possibility that Earth might become a new kind of threat, a species that, having tasted victory, might now seek to dominate the galaxy for themselves. Humanity was aware of these suspicions but didn't let them distract from the larger mission. Earth's leaders knew that the path forward wasn't about conquest or domination, it was about survival. The Zithra had shown them what was at stake, and now, humanity was determined to ensure that the galaxy would never again be vulnerable to such terror. As the first diplomatic fleets set out to establish new alliances, Earth's military began a campaign of quiet expansion. Not of territory, but of knowledge. Humanity sought out ancient technologies, hidden data archives, and forgotten histories from across the galaxy. They had learned from the Zithra's mistakes and were determined to be ready for whatever came next. And so, the galaxy watched, waiting to see what humanity would become. Earth, once a quiet backwater planet on the edge of the galaxy, had risen to face one of the greatest threats the universe had ever known. They had survived, adapted, and grown stronger. But as they looked to the future, they understood the true lesson of the Zithra: the galaxy was a dangerous place, and only those who were prepared could hope to survive. In the end, humanity had proven one thing: no matter how advanced or terrifying the enemy, there was always a way to fight back. Earth had become the embodiment of that truth, and now the galaxy had to decide whether to stand with them or risk facing the Zithra's return alone. Humanity was ready, and for the first time in its history, it was no longer afraid. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the galaxy would never be the same again.